do some of the filtering for them by asking some questions. Go, okay, so what's costing you the most then? What's hurting you the most? What's the quickest thing you could do? What's the easiest thing you could do? What's the cheapest thing you could do? Just so that those filters start to enter into the psyche of that individual.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Paul from Thinking Focus.
And I'm Rob from Thinking Focus.
And the question is, why do we hesitate to pick what we actually want to do?
The question is from Thinking Focus, a podcast about how we sometimes get in our own way and what we can do about it.
Great question. And I think it's because there's just so much stuff out there to choose from in a typical working day that actually we sort of suffer from ambiguity. And that creates uncertainty. There's so many different things that we could do that we hesitate. It's almost as if we're waiting for the right thing to just show itself in front of us. And we go, oh, that's the thing that I need to work on.
Yeah, now that makes sense because the kind of emotional part of our brain loves clarity or certainty, actually, is probably a better word. It loves certainty. So emotionally, I feel much more comfortable if I'm certain what the answer is.
Right. And so actually, the more ambiguity there is, the more uncomfortable I feel. And that also causes people, when they're asked to make a decision, to hesitate, to then think, well, I don't know if I'm making the right decision and which one should I choose. So, there is a sort of a cognitive process here that complicates our ability to make a decision.
Yeah, so we sit back and wait and go, well, if I don't decide today, if I wait till tomorrow, maybe it'll all become clear. It's going to miraculously
become obvious to us. Yeah. And we also, I think, take our lead from other people. So there's a permission culture thing that happens sometimes in organisations where rather than us being proactive as individuals and stepping forward and going, I'm going to take ownership for this particular thing, we're waiting for everybody else to make those choices, and we're hanging back and holding back until we're forced to. And so part of that is that we sort of go, it'll become clear to us, I'm sure, at some point, and until it does, I'll just get on with my day job.
I'll we see that a lot when we're working with businesses, don't we? Yeah. That people are waiting. I'm going to say this quite harshly, and I don't mean it this badly, but they're waiting to be told what to do.
Yes.
And then when you question them, they know exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah.
They just want that extra little step. I think permission is the word you used.
Yeah.
Of somebody going, you go and do that bit.
Well, and a classic to that is that, we tend to use, this terminology a lot when we're working with project teams about, what's getting in the way, what's the interference. And most people, to your point, can label all the interferences very easily. You come up with a whole big list of them. It only takes 3 or 4 minutes before people go, and this is wrong, and this is getting in the way, and this is slowing me down, and that's, and then you rather disingenuously ask a few other questions. Go, and how long has that been going on for then? Oh, years. And who else knows about that? Oh, everybody in my project team. And, you get these answers back. And then when you ask, so what are you doing about it then? There's almost a deafening silence because, of course, that's the real answer. Nobody's doing anything about it. And when you then sort of turn around and say, well, you've got an opportunity now to do something about it, which one? You're sort of not really helping that individual because they're looking at a myriad of different things, and it's so you've got to pick one. Don't hesitate. We've got to pick one.
So is the mindset before that a mindset of moving them to actually you need to be in that kind of seek forgiveness, not ask permission space?
Yes.
Because if you're asking permission's never going to come.
Right.
You're going to circle around this forever.
But there's an easy way of getting people to think about permission. And I think that is that out of the, and I'll just use my words again, the myriad of things that we might be facing, do some of the filtering for them by asking some questions. Go, okay, so what's costing you the most then? What's hurting you the most? What's the quickest thing you could do? What's the easiest thing you could do? What's the cheapest thing you could do? Just so that those filters start to enter into the psyche of that individual, for them to go, oh, well, I can pick that one then, because that's the easiest, or I can pick this one then, because that would have the biggest impact. And so part of that, if you like, helpful stuff that we can sometimes help people with in teams is because we want to get away from this, don't wait, let's pick something. Let me steer you towards some of the things that are going to have the biggest impact, or the things that you're going to enjoy the most, the things that you're going to see the biggest difference with. Yeah.
So does it matter then which one I pick to start with?
I don't think it does, apart from you have to keep an eye on the bigger picture. Yeah, because if we sort of go, oh, what are the easy ones? People could choose a whole pile of easy ones, but they're not going to really necessarily cause, any real impact to the business. So the element of enabling people to actually see the bigger picture is also, a key thing to do here. But what we're really doing is we're saying, let me ask you a question about a thing to pick. Because we've got to pick something, we've got to start somewhere. And then there's always a follow-up question, say, and what makes that relevant? What makes that relevant? So that we can filter out the things that people might be tempted to choose, but they might not be the best thing to work on at the moment.
So if I've picked something, and let's say we've got rid of the non-relevant, but I've got 8 or 9 things I could choose from. Mm-hmm. If I pick something, I may be concerned that I've picked the wrong one. Mm-hmm. How do I deal with that?
Well, I think that would become obvious very quickly in 2 ways. One is that I think you need to pick something and relate it to the other things on the list. So in other words, you're making sure that the things that you haven't picked, you're asking that follow-up question, so what makes this more relevant than that one over there, for example?
Yep.
So there's a comparative thing. But I think there's also an element here of being very focused. The next step on choosing something is to then make some decisions about what the goal is, what the achievement is, what is the thing, how are you going to measure the impact of that thing? And if people then find that really difficult to do, they might not have necessarily chosen the right thing. So there's, that all adds to a filtering process, I think, for a work stream or a project team, for people to then think about, and am I really working on the right thing here?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, part of me is going, though, if I've got 8 or 9 things to do, sometimes I probably want to pick not necessarily the most relevant one to start with, just to get moving.
Right.
So, almost going back to that, what's the easiest?
Yeah.
So, is that a fair approach? Because I do that all the time. I pick something so I get a kind of early win. Because it just feels better.
But that's a good thing to do, So there's a, being able to have a few things that you can get some early motivation from. Yeah. I've achieved something. Oh, I've achieved something else. Oh, I've achieved another thing. That's great. Is a great technique. Yeah, absolutely. That should be encouraged. I mean, I think part of the choice has to be around. Building the choices that are being made into an overall picture of why they're relevant to each other, and then picking off the order in which you might want to tackle things. And part of the thinking behind the order might be, let's get some quick wins under our belt so that we can enable a little bit of forward momentum to happen. But there's also a little bit of a psychological issue to that, because you enable people to be more motivated because they now recognise that they can achieve something. Yeah, if you're having to wait for 4 months before you get your first win, it's quite difficult to keep the motivation going.
Yeah, that is hard, isn't it? Actually, so actually, in any of these things, getting some early ticks on, or crossing stuff off that to-do list feels quite good.
Well, the other thing, and you and I both had experience of this, where you've got maybe somebody or a group of people who are working on something that is longer term. Yeah. When they've achieved the first part of that overall goal, and let's say it's something they're working on for a year, they then feel more confident in their ability to tackle something that might have been a bit more difficult to achieve. Yes. So day one, when you're sort of going, let's rank these in order of how easy it is as opposed to how hard it is. Some hard ones might still be really relevant to do, but you might want to choose the easy ones to get that early momentum going. And the mindset, you and I both noticed this, the mindset will change as people start making that progress, because they go, now we feel prepared to tackle the harder ones.
Yeah, because it's almost like, I've got 10 things to do, 5 are really easy, 5 are really hard. But actually, if I do the 5 really easy ones, it feels like I'm halfway. Yeah. Even though intuitively I know I'm not. Yeah. I know that the other 5 are going to take me 10 times as long. Yeah. I'm halfway. I've ticked 5 off my list of 10.
Sure.
That feels quite good.
Sure, absolutely. And if you look at the relevance of those particular things and how they relate to each other, it might be practically that by achieving 2 or 3 of the easier ones, it makes the harder one easier to achieve anyway, because you've taken 2 or 3 steps along the way to that. Something that is, I don't know, if I wanted to, set myself a completely different task, different goal that I've got no experience in so far, a logical thought pattern must be for me to actually go, so what are the things related to that I am quite good at, or that I could do first to enable me to start working towards that thing that I haven't got experience of yet. So a musical instrument, for example, I'm going to play a brand new musical instrument. Well, part of that is I've never played that musical instrument before, so that's going to be really hard. But part of my other thinking could be, have I played other musical instruments before? And how might they be related to the one of my musical instrument of choice?
Leveraging previous skills, previous knowledge.
Yeah. It's not, now for some people, they might want to choose to pick up and play a musical instrument and they've got no previous experience whatsoever in any description of learning music, singing, playing an instrument, being part of anything like that. So that's arguably a harder journey for them. Whereas somebody who might have played the recorder at school or, owned a guitar for a year and then gave up on it, it might be an easier journey for them because at least they've had some exposure.
Now, the other side to this that I get hit with a lot when we're working with clients is people get really worried about, what happens if that really is the wrong thing. If I think there's 10 things to do, I've picked number 8, and it turns out number 8 wasn't relevant when I get going.
Right.
And it always surprises me because you kind of go, in a complex and ambiguous world that we live in, getting that list right on day one is almost impossible.
Yeah.
But I say to people, well, don't worry about it. I mean, what do you say to people in that scenario?
I say to people typically that it will become obvious. So a few weeks in, a couple of months in, it will become obvious because you'll recognise that actually the thing that you're working on needs to be replaced by something completely different. But
there's a big but here.
But only if you've set up some sort of metric to begin with, only if you've actually been quite clear about what your measurement of that progress is going to be.
Yeah.
So if you don't track it, then you can't even see where it's heading, where the whole thing is heading. If you're waiting for 4 months before you then pick it up again and go, oh, is it delivering anything to me? So you probably need to deal with some of that uncertainty. You probably need to set in place a very specific measure or 2 or 3 and do it very frequently, so early and often to confirm that you're working on the right thing or to give you the indicator that you should be working on something else.
And you're saying there, I think you're implying anyway, that if I get to the point where I go, this is just the wrong thing, I stop and I pick something else.
You need to.
And that's just fine.
Yes.
Because again, you and I have both met people who start something, and because it says on the to-do list they must do it, they will get to the end, even though they know it adds no value or is the wrong thing to do.
Well, sorry to bring some sort of religious reference in here, but it's not Moses and the tablet of stone, and that's where some people think that they need to be. The goal has been written and it certainly can't be changed. No, that's not the case. Part of our advice and our guidance to people is you need to plan with the expectation that the plan is going to change.
Which is great advice.
Yeah.
So let me summarise that.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, actually, when you've got this kind of wave of ambiguous uncertainty in front of you, you need to pick something.
Yeah.
Pick something that's relevant, understand the relevance.
Yeah.
Pick something that you can measure and track.
Yeah.
And be prepared to go, hey, this is no longer the one I want to work on and I can change it because you've got a bigger goal or a bigger destination in mind.
Yes. And also pick something where you can spot the relevance of that thing amongst the other things that also need to happen. Yeah. So part of that measurement is a relevance measure, not just a measure of progress necessarily.
Marvellous. Yeah. Now I've got a big to-do list to go and work on there. I'm going to go and pick something.
All right.
Next time on The Question Is...
why don't people believe it when they are being given permission? Because some people hear that message, however the message is given, and they just don't believe it. They still continue believing whatever the opposite of that is, that I don't have permission.
Thinking Focus works with teams and business units in organizations around the world, helping them achieve breakthroughs by enabling them to think differently. To find out more about our work and how we could help your organization, go to www.thinkingfocus.com.